going on? Welcome into the Matt Bernier Show. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. This is the preview edition. Going to take a look at the split divisions of the Rebel Stakes on Saturday afternoon down at Oaklawn Park. Races 8 and 10. Bob Baffert, he's got two big return horses off the layoff. You've got Improbable in the first division, and you have Game Winner, the two-year-old champion, in the second division. We'll find out what we get there. I'm going to show you some formulator notes, show you some replays, go through my sort of logic and how I went through the race. If you listen to this on YouTube, it's going to be perfect because you can actually see everything that goes along with it. You can also do that over on video.drf.com, but I recognize that some of you listen to this thing on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or however you get your podcasts, that there isn't any sort of a visual. If that's the case, however it is, please subscribe, write us reviews, leave us positive ratings, give us thumbs up. If you're over on YouTube, make sure the bell icon's lit up so you get everything that DRFTV has to offer. So we'll go over these two races, and again, whether you agree, disagree, whatever it is, comments beneath the video player on YouTube or on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. I'm curious thoughts. I want to know because I've got some opinions. Maybe they're right, maybe they're not, but I want to know what your opinions are as well. Who knows? Let's see how things shake down. Let's dive right into it. The first division of two for this year's Rebel down at Oaklawn Park, race number 8 on Saturday. All right, so I'm going to try to keep these things tight because we're going to go over both divisions. We'll kick it off with the first division. It's the 8th race on Saturday. The big name in here is Improbable. For those of you that are new to these videos, or if you're listening, I'm going to try to explain this as best as I can. These numbers up here in the upper right-hand corner, to me, these are the numbers it's going to take at least this, if not better, to win this race on Saturday. If you haven't eclipsed this number yet, there needs to be at least reason to believe that you will get to that point. For a horse like Improbable, he has eclipsed the 91 Beyer on a couple occasions. The 111 time form rating he's eclipsed as well, so he kind of checks all the boxes. That outside draw is going to be to his benefit. We'll only spotlight a few horses in here, ones that I think are intriguing. The inside runner, Extra Hope. I've been a fan of this horse for quite some time. It goes out for Richard Mandella, and look, I get it. He was no match for Improbable 2 starts back. That was in his 2-year-old finale. But he came back, and it was a sloppy sealed track. It was over a relatively speed-friendly strip at Santa Anita. But boy, I thought you couldn't ask for a more impressive effort, I think, than this horse gave you. Going to take a look right now. Here he is. He's already made the front. I just think all around this is really impressive. Now, you go through and you look at some other pieces about this race. Perhaps from a pace standpoint, it's not going to be necessarily ideal for him. There is some other speed in here. I don't know that there are any other burners. And drawing down on the inside, I think Mike Smith's got one way to go. You just send this horse and say, you know what, we're going to go on as long as we can. But his best races very clearly have come going around 2 turns. The question many people, I'm sure, are going to look at is going to say, you know, was it the wet track that really moved this horse up in a spot like this? I don't know. To be honest, I like all of his 2-turn races. I thought this race at Santa Anita wasn't terrible. I thought this race was really solid when he went off and broke his maiden by over 8 lengths, almost 9 lengths. And I thought his Los Al race, ultimately, I didn't think it was a terrible effort. He comes back and he airs like that. I think he's a nice horse. Smith has the mount. Flavian Pratt stays aboard Galilean, who we'll get to more momentarily. I made this horse 6-1 on my value line. Number 2 horse, Long Range Toddy. I admittedly don't love this horse, but I do think his most recent run in that Southwest, better than it looks on paper. You're going to see here the 84 Beyer. You're going to see a 109 raw time form rating. I do question this race as a whole, the Southwest. Not totally convinced that we had something spectacular here. But if I'm going to give anybody the benefit of the doubt, Long Range Toddy is one of them. We're going to blow this thing up right here. Long Range Toddy is the 10. He's this horse in the white silks. Loaded in amongst, look at this. He's got 5 horses out here. He's boxed in over here. 2 horses out here. He is in the absolute box of all boxes. And you're going to see as they continue on, he really just doesn't get an opportunity to run until it's far too late. He's going to need to angle around a little bit. It was just a trip that, you know, it's one of those things. You save ground. It's a perfect trip until it's not. You see him all jacked up right now and behind horses. Everybody else is all out at this point. He's going to eventually split horses and get down to the inside and finish with some interest. I think it was better than it looks. Is it good enough to win and beat all the Southern California horses? I don't know. I'm a little bit dubious about that. But I think if you are playing exotics, you're playing an exacta or a try, whatever else it may be, he might be one that I'd be considering underneath. Again, I don't particularly love him, but as a horse, but I do think that race was better than it may look at face value. I made him 8-1. Let's move along here. Easy Shot is the number 4 horse. I think he's going to be a one-turn horse. Let's turn him back at that point. Then I'll be a little bit more intrigued. These route races, I don't like him. In these spots, you got a number of horses in here that just seem overmatched. I suppose the 7 Classy John's a little bit interesting for Dallas Stewart. Really hasn't done a heck of a lot wrong. Never been out of the exact in 5 lifetime starts. I thought he'd be a terrible field here in this Louisiana-bred stakes race down at Delta Downs. Numbers-wise, he's not that far off. He does need to improve, not out of the realm of possibility. Find it interesting that they ship him here and they don't run him at the fairgrounds. I believe next weekend is the Louisiana Derby. But Classy John, I think he is probably a little bit overmatched from a class standpoint. But again, if you're looking for a big number, you're going to get it on a horse like this. Let's get to the outside two. I think most people will look at them as the 2 main sort of players in this spot. Galilean is the number 8 for Hollendorfer and Flavian Pratt. This horse has done nothing wrong. He is a neck away from being unbeaten in 4 lifetime starts. I think he's been very impressive in each of his past 2. This King Glorious, I thought he'd beat a really weak field. And he was a little bit goofy down the lane. He swapped leads once, but again, first time 2 turns, long stretch at Los Al. I don't really want to hold that against him too much. Came back in the Cal Cup Derby. You want to talk about visually awesome? That's exactly what this is. He's in those West Point silks on the far outside. The question now becomes, at what point do you look at it and say, okay, well, from a numbers standpoint, he's not far off, but he is not among the fastest just yet, especially if we're going to talk about improbable. But when you look at the tape of this horse, this looks like a nice horse. The question now becomes, do you think he can do this against better horses? We've seen time and time again, and I think in recent memory anyway, one of the more well-known or the more obvious examples of this would be a horse like Catalina Cruiser. Now, perhaps something went wrong with him in the Breeders' Cup last year because he hasn't been seen since. But you saw what happened against inferior company with Cushy Trips. He just went out there and waxed the fields. Takes on better horses, and he is nowhere. When the real running starts, that's when he's in the deep end. With Galilean, against inferior fields, he's looked really, really good. And I think there's something here. I think he is probably, if he is not of the upper echelon, he's in that next tier. We'll find out much more on Saturday. But we won't really know until he does it. And that's the thing that I would just approach with some caution, especially if you're looking at that morning line of 3-1. You'll note that I made him 6-1 just because to me, this is the prove it race. Are you really of are you the cream of the crop, or are you a little bit of a notch or 2 below? Visually, I can make the case that he is as impressive, if not more than improbable. From a numbers standpoint, he needs to take his game to the next level if he's going to really run with him. And let's get to the big horse in here, Improbable. Look, his first start is a 3-year-old. He's been gone for some time. Obviously, the Santa Anita thing has been a little bit of an issue. To me, though, he was the most impressive 2-year-old that there was last year. And if he even comes back with the Los Al Futurity, I think he's going to win this race. We're going to go back and take a look at that right now as they're getting ready to swing into the stretch. He is coming up here in the white silks. Drayden Van Dyke's getting into him. The beautiful thing about this horse, the thing that I'm most impressed with, once he finally levels off and hits that stride, it's almost as if there's another gear or 2. When everyone else is really all out feeling the effects of it, it seems like he's just now getting the engine cooking. I love everything about it. The gallop out is just very, very strong. He's just, to me, there's not a lot to knock about this horse. I think he is relatively close to the total package. You see him drawing away from horses, and I'm sure people initially look at it and go, well, how good was that field? Well, Mucho Gusto, we saw what he did. He came back in his 3-year-old debut and won a stakes race with a 90 buyer, and then Extra Hope, the horse that he's going to run into here, breaking down on the inside. He was a next out winner with an 86 buyer. I think Improbable was the most talented 2-year-old that we saw as far as the males are concerned, and I think thus far of the 3-year-olds, we'll find out what we get. I can't call him the most talented or the best 3-year-old because I haven't seen him run yet, but if the tape I've seen of him working out is any indication, and his 2-year-old form, if there is any sort of improvement going forward, I think he's just going to be too much for this field to handle. I made him even money. I know he's going to be much shorter than that, but it is just one of those things where I think you need to draw the line somewhere. And if he had already started once this year, perhaps I would be more inclined to make him sort of in that 3 to 5 range. But first start as a 3-year-old, shipping in, a couple different things going against him. Maybe the workouts have been a little bit hiccupy just based on the Santa Anita thing. I made him even money as opposed to anything shorter. So ultimately, where did I go? In the first division, no surprise. I'm going to go with Improbable in this spot. I just think he is the best horse in here. We'll find out if that ends up bearing out. I think he's the best. We'll find out. I've always liked Extra Hope. I picked him second in this spot. Long Range Toddy for a little bit of value. I think he's the one that perhaps you can go through and make a case that that Southwest might not have been a great race, great field, but boy, he really got kind of the short end of the stick there. And I'm picking Galilean in fourth. Is he the fourth most likely winner? No, he's probably higher on that list. But to me, if you're going to use the heavy favorite in Improbable, you gotta find some value somewhere. For me, it's going to be to try to beat Galilean, and really the acid test for me with that horse. 9-1-2-8 in the 8th at Oaklawn Saturday. It's the first division of the Rebel. Now, let's go on to the second division. Division 2 of the Rebel, and this happens to be the DRF Bets Race of the Day, and you can go over, get those free Formulator Pass performances on the Race of the Day page on DRF.com. This is the return of the 2-year-old champion from 2018 in Game Winner, the other big Baffert horse running here on Saturday. He is going to be a very likely win contender. I'll get to him in a bit and explain why I'm going to take a shot against him in this spot. Again, very similar to that first one. I'm not going to go through all of them simply because there's 2 races that we need to go over. Let's go to the number 2 horse, Laughing Fox, for Steve Asmussen. You can see that the most recent run from a numbers standpoint was solid enough, and for what it's worth at the top. Note the difference in the numbers that I'm using for this race, this division, as opposed to the first division. First division, I went with a 91 Beyer and a 111 time form rating. Here, I'm going to go with a 90 Beyer and a 112 time form rating. Not a lot of difference, but it's just sort of benchmarks that I'll use, and it doesn't have to be a uniform thing from one race to another. To me, it's all relative. We talk about pars and certain things that you need to hit. Well, every race is relative. Not each race is the same. One race, sure, maybe it will take an 80 to win, but then maybe you're going to get another race where the field, okay, maybe the same sort of condition level and the same level overall, but if the field itself isn't very good and none of them are going to get to that number of whatever your par is, why am I using that as the baseline? I want to use it off of what I want, a more sort of relative or reasonable number to expect from a group in this sort of given circumstance, as opposed to just an arbitrary average. There it is. Long story short. Let's go down here. Laughing Fox. I thought the most recent run was quite good. You see the 3rd place finisher is the next out winner in this spot with an 84 Beyer speed figure. The 6th place finisher came back and earned 79. We'll take a look at this run. The concern here with a horse like this is you see this red bar. Now, I downloaded these PPs before they went final in Formulator, so I had to put in the post numbers as well as fill in some numbers here and there as far as ratings are concerned. But you see the big pace signed on here, and that could make this horse be a little bit of fool's gold. I'm going to be totally honest with you. But at the same time, look, here he is. He's in these blue silks rolling from the back of the pack now. And you can see the half, 46-1. It was an honest clip. I just like how professional he was here. You're going to see Ricardo Santana just guide him through horses. When they turn for home, he's going to split very nicely. And it looks like he's just going to go on and win for fun. But there's another horse that puts up a pretty good fight in this spot. And I think that's the thing that I love the most about Laughing Fox with this effort here. You're going to see right now it looks like he's just gone for home. But this 3 horse is really going to be a little bit of a thorn in his side. And for a moment, it looks like he's actually going to go on and get the job done. I love that Laughing Fox digs back in and comes back on that horse. Now, I know the 3 is going to pop to his left lead here. Maybe he was just getting tired. I just like the way that Laughing Fox digs back in and comes back on. I liked his gallop out. Thought it was solid. This, to me, this might be one of those horses that, you know what, may not love the Southwest as a whole. So maybe you want to take a look at a different horse from Oaklawn or some of these other 3-year-olds that are up and coming down there in Arkansas, because the Southwest, the jury is kind of out. Is it any good? Who knows? We'll find out. I like that this horse is 2 for 2 at the distance. The 2-turn races are the 2 best of his career. I think Laughing Fox is interesting. I made him 6-1 in here. Where are we going next? Let's go to the number 5 horse, the big horse. Game Winner. You see Parsimony. I made him 49-1. Jersey Agenda 49-1. Game Winner. Made him 2-1 in this spot. He's going to be much shorter. I haven't seen the morning line just yet, so I don't know exactly what he is. But he's unbeaten for perfect 4 from 4. He has done nothing wrong throughout his career. But there is a situation where this right here, where I have highlighted blue, I question the quality of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile as a whole. Now, we're going to go back. He was much the best in this race. And I understand initially I probably looked at it as well, saying K-Nix Go was really the only part of the pace still around at the end. It was a big effort from him. But Game Winner was wide every step of the way. And you're going to see he goes on. They're going to have their little bump at the top of the lane. You've all seen this stretch run a number of times at this point. The more and more time goes by, the less and less I like this race. I was questionable about it, or I questioned it early on. I feel like I'm getting validated more and more in thinking that this was not a very good group in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year. And who knows? Does that mean that Game Winner just took advantage of a weak group, and now all of a sudden when he comes off this bench against better horses, he's going to have his work cut out for him? We'll find out. I think he deserves to be the favorite, no question about it. He's the most likely winner of the race, 100%. But given the way everything has gone in Southern California, given the fact that he's been gone since the beginning of November, this is a long, long layoff for this horse. And the other thing to keep in mind, Baffert, everyone talks about him down at Oaklawn. He had that stretch about 4 or 5 years ago where it seemed like everything he went down there with just won. Everything was great. Well, guess what? These past 3 years, he has still won his fair share. I want to say he's right around 25%, but it's a far cry from when he was batting about 50% with some of those other runners. And he's had his fair share of short prices stub their toe down at Oaklawn. Game Winner, I'm not telling you he's not going to run well. I think if you're going to take a shot against him, this is the time to do it. The 6 Omaha Beach is a very, very interesting candidate in here for Richard Mandella. The field that he beat most recently I just thought was weak overall, but boy, did he do it very impressively. Now, going into that race, I had already started to question his heart, because you see he's second by a half length, second by a neck, second by a nose. You know, a number of races that he shouldn't have lost. He should have gone on and got the job done. But then all of a sudden he comes back with this race here. And the real question is, well, there's two questions. You're going to see this race. Look at those fractions. 21-3, 43-3. He's absolutely whistling out there on the front end. Now, the question I have coming out of this race, the obvious one, is the sloppy sealed track. This is the first time he encountered that. He went out there, absolutely blitzed this field, and goes on and wins for fun. I'm more interested in the possibility or the notion, and who knows, maybe this is a hypothesis that's just out in left field, but I'm starting to wonder is he going to be a one-turn kind of horse? Now, he's routed 4 of his 5 lifetime starts. This is the only time he's ever gone one turn. I'm wondering, just based on the way that he ran that day, his pedigree would suggest he wants to go as long as possible. When I see him run like that, though, I go, oof, that was damn good. And I know that run 2 back was not bad, but he had the track in his favor that day. You see I have intensely speed friendly according to Timeform US, and he couldn't hold off Nolo Contesto, and that was when he had everything go his own way. And you'll see this is sort of a trend for this horse, is that he just can't quite get over the hump at 2 turns. Now maybe, who knows, Saturday, maybe that's the day. But when I see an effort like this that is just so far superior, in my opinion, to anything that he had done prior, well, it's either one of two things to me. It's either he just adores a wet track, and he's still a little bit of the, unsure as far as overall ability is concerned, or does it turn back to 7/8? Is it the one-turn configuration where he can just go and not worry about it, just blast to the front and say, come on, come and catch me, I'm that good? We'll find out. You're going to learn a lot about this horse on Saturday. My theory is right now that he actually is a one-turn horse as opposed to 2. And again, the pedigree would suggest he wants to run all day. My working theory is that he is actually going to be better off going shorter. We'll find out. I may look like an idiot come Saturday afternoon when he wins this thing. But I'm just very curious to see what we get from him. The 7-horse Our Brain Trust. Mark Casse sends this one out. Blinkers go on. Highest last out buyer in the field. Highest last out raw time form rating. You see this formulator fact. Past 5 years, first time blinkers. Route races, graded stakes races, 4 for 13, 7 in the money with a 326 ROI. This was initially when I looked at this race. This is the Withers that we're going to go back to. Wasn't sold on the quality of it because you're going to see 3 horses across at the wire, including Tax, including Not That Brady. A little bit of a bump right there between those 2 horses. Nothing really. I'm not going to hold that against anyone. I do like the fact that Our Brain Trust digs in, though, and carries on with it. He doesn't totally spit it. He fights on to the end. The question or concern I had coming out of this race, though, was how good could it possibly be? It's, again, 3 across the wire, usually not the hallmark of a good dirt race. Well, I guess if you want to sort of be a little bit, I'm trying to think of the right word. If you want the fears to be allayed, let's put it that way. 4th and 5th place finishers in this race came back and they earned 86s last weekend in the Tampa Bay Derby. What you want to do with that, that's entirely up to you, but at least the number may not be so outrageous or so crazy to believe. Our Brain Trust, I think, in many ways, you could look at him and say he is the alternative in here, simply because of the numbers, simply because distance isn't going to be an issue, all those sorts of things. And at face value, it looks like he came out of a good race in the Withers. I'm still not 100% sold on the Withers, but I can understand people that like Our Brain Trust. And as far as Gunmetal Gray is concerned, I'm not going to show any tape here. When I wrote about him in the Derby Guide, I said he's one of the more honest horses, I think, of this crop of the 3-year-olds. You know what you're going to get. He's a one-run closer. He hasn't run exceptionally fast just yet. If he gets some pace, he'll come along at the end. If he doesn't get pace, he's going to be compromised. I think that's what you're looking at here. I think the pace will be honest. I think that it's interesting that Flavien Prat is here. I think this horse is, to me, best used underneath. But again, if the pace is hot, like I think it might be, who knows? Maybe he can get a piece of this entire thing. Made him 6-1. The outside 2 horses, I think they're both overmatched. Where did I go in here? Game winner. Look, he's going to be tough to beat in here. There's no denying that. But that Breeders' Cup Juvenile form, it's enough for me to say, you know what? Plus that long layoff, I'm going to take a shot against him. I picked him second in here. I liked the effort from Laughing Fox. Again, it could entirely be fool's gold here, but I just like the way that not only did he come into the race smoothly, but I like that he battled back down on the inside there. He didn't have to go on like that. That horse on the outside looked like he had a full head of steam, and Laughing Fox extended on. You see the pedigree is there. The connections are there. I think the pace is going to be there as well. I'm going to go with Laughing Fox to win the second division of the Rebel, 2-5-7-8 for me on Saturday. So there you have it, a look at both of the split divisions of this year's Rebel Stakes. We'll find out what happens going forward, if the Baffert horses fire, if there are fresh faces that show up and put forth big performances, and how it just overall shapes the landscape of this 3-year-old division going forward. Next weekend, I believe, is the Louisiana Derby. Then the following weekend, you've got, I believe that's the big weekend, isn't it? Where are we now? Louisiana Derby might be in 2 weeks. I don't even know. There's so many races going on at this point. The point is, we're getting into the thick of it. We're getting into the deep end. And hopefully we get a little bit more clarity. That's all I look for in these races. These 3-year-old preps going forward. I want clarity. Chaos doesn't help sort of the picture. It doesn't help sort of determine where things stand. A little bit of formfulness goes a long way. I'd like to just see the good horses, or what we think are the good horses, put forth good performances. Don't have to win, but I'd like to at least see good efforts from these horses. We'll find out what we get here. A couple of good races on Saturday down at Oaklawn Park. Thank you for listening. Again, if you've been watching, it helps, the preview edition, certainly. You've got YouTube. You've got video.drf.com for those two things. If you listen to it, that's great too. You've got Apple Podcasts. You've got Spotify. However you get your podcasts. Number of different ways. But however you do, make sure you subscribe. Write us reviews, give us positive ratings, thumbs up over on YouTube. Questions, comments, concerns, either beneath the video player on YouTube or on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. I will be back with the recap edition at the beginning of next week. And by the way, that's the other thing too. We always kind of positioned it as Tuesday and Friday. Really now it's more like Monday and Thursday, because we're not running live on Tuesdays and Fridays anymore. So you can just kind of go through this thing. They're usually out sort of midday, late afternoon, early evening on Monday and Thursday. So you get a little bit more time. If you've been those folks waiting until Tuesday and Friday, don't need to do that anymore. Monday night and Thursday, that's usually when they come out. So I will be back recording on Monday for the recap edition. We'll go over these 2 races as well as some other big races around the country. We'll get you ready. What's on tap for the rest of the week next week on DRFTV. So without further ado, best of luck this weekend, however you play, whatever you play, wherever you play. This has been the preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show.